This is Cynthia Sue Larson with RealityShifters.com, and today I'd like to talk to you about the idea of sudden jumps, big changes, and they can occur everywhere. I'd like to start with a quote that comes from the TV show Shameless. This is from the Frank the Plumber episode, Season 3, Episode 9. It says, "Great things don't happen in tiny little increments. You know they happen when someone thinks completely differently." So when we think about that, we get the idea, or I do, because I'm now speaking to you from the Boulderado Hotel in Boulder, Colorado. I think about history. This hotel is like a museum. It's got pictures showing a great flood when Boulder Creek flooded over 100 years ago, things like that. So when we think about history, think about the time in this hotel when guests came in horses and buggies and carriages before the car, and the firemen didn't have a fire truck. They were doing things on foot. This is extraordinary. When we think about that, we get the idea that sometimes we have witnessed in our history when there's been a big change. We don't see the in-between phase between horse and buggy and automobile. And maybe it existed, but most people didn't have it. Why bother with that when you can go straight to the automobile? Turns out nature thinks very similarly, and I have spoken about that previously, so I'm not going to go into the E. coli bacteria and the way that it could instantly make a huge evolutionary change and basically evolve itself into a form of bacteria that could then digest the only food presented to it that it could not eat before, lactose, which is what the scientists were giving it. So if we think in terms of evolution, a lot of us have believed, as Darwin proposed, and according to classical physics it makes sense, that instead of these huge steps, these huge jumps of evolution, where there are missing links, you've heard that phrase, we would expect to see lots of little in-between phases where a species would evolve gradually. That's not, in fact, what we're finding in the laboratory right now with bacteria. It's not what we would expect when you're thinking in terms of the quantum computers that are being built, and you recognize all of the quantum phenomena are quite possibly occurring at every level of reality. That's the big idea that I'm presenting to you, which means that when I get an email from someone, as I did today, that Willie Nelson died many years ago, according to this person, and I believe that that's a true observation that someone is making, and in my reality, right now, Willie Nelson is alive today, and hopefully also when you watch this video. So the thing to think about is, how is it possible that we sometimes get a different reality? The so-called Mandela effect was a term coined by Fiona Broome in 2010. She has a website all about it. And actually, what I'm saying is that phenomenon where you see someone alive again, such as I first reported in print in 1999 in my book Reality Shifts, When Consciousness Changes the Physical World. I think it's important for people to realize this phenomena is not just now happening, just as the Large Hadron Collider is firing up. No, it's been around for what I'm saying is millennia. And we can see proof of this if you start looking for it that way, and you view the archaeological record, and you view evolutionary jumps as being quantum jumps. Instead of looking for the tiny little step that makes it look like a slope, instead of, you start looking for these huge jumps. It's a staircase with giant steps. That is what we would expect to see in a quantum universe, which is what I believe we have, which is why there can be such a thing as a science of miracles. And I essentially get into that. I don't call it that, but this is my book, Quantum Jumps, An Extraordinary Science of Happiness and Prosperity. And basically it is talking about the placebo effect and the way people can fake it till they make it. And this is being studied at Harvard. Millions, if not billions of dollars are being spent to study this. It's not woo-woo, it's not make-believe, it's serious science. And we're actually seeing information coming forth from all fields of science now about this to support these ideas. And so what I'd like you to think about is the big changes in your life and the big Mandela effects you might have seen, where you might have observed something that can't possibly be true in this reality, because when you do the fact-checking, you do the Google search, you don't see that there's been any kind of steady progress of For example, Willie Nelson was reported dead, and oops, they made a mistake, and actually he's fine. No, there's nothing like that. There's not even any report that there had been confusion. Aside from these Mandela effect videos, blog posts, articles, and so forth, what you'll see is he's always been here. There's a continuous history that goes all the way back. That's also what I'm saying is happening in all fields of all of our sciences, from cosmology to biology to chemistry, you name it. So this means, I believe, that we all have quite a great deal to be grateful for, and that's a good way to look at your life, to look back not with regret on the past, but with gratitude, especially for things you've had a part in. And to the degree that we can all keep asking how good can it get, we can absolutely start seeing exactly that. Until next time, this is Cynthia Sue Larson talking to you from Boulder, Colorado, and I'm with RealityShifters.com. Thank you.